Well, welcome everybody to Forever Bristol City podcast. I'm afraid the miracle didn't happen at Bramwell Lane last night. The final score, Sheffield United 3, City 0, 6-0 on aggregate. So that's another record that we don't want. Firstly, the lowest points total to finish sixth, and now the widest margin of defeat of any club at this level of playoff contention, to be sure. I'm joined by Dave Tovey. It's just the two of us today. What do we say? Dave, we do it in the usual format. Your thoughts on the final whistle?
My mind was in a bit of a different place at full time yesterday, a bit more philosophical, shall we say. I felt sad for Manning and the players. I thought of just how much joy they've given us since the end of February. I was thinking about as well how Ashton Gate has changed in that time. You know, we often speak about a lack of atmosphere, but it shined, the buzz, the atmosphere, the noise, the cauldron it's become, the fortress it's become. The players and Manning deserve so much credit for that. And please bottle it up for next season. I thought of people that watch this podcast, such as Rob Pickles and Matthew Pickles, who make it part of their routine, part of the day. The team has given us something to talk about. Because of that, they get more joy in their routine. The season has ended in a heartbreak. You know, the players deserve better than that. Manning deserve better than that. There's a lot to discuss of why it went wrong. But the first thing that we should say is thank you, because it's been a hell of a ride.
Yeah, I said to you before we went live, Dave, I felt our season hit its zenith with that Hayden Roberts winner against West Brom. Yeah, because that was really, really high. And since that West Brom game, it's just gone poorly. You know, we've conceded goals. I think that's, 15 now in the last 5 games. I know we were conceding at 2 goals a game in the first 8 of this season, so that was a problem. We have had injuries. There's no doubt about that. And I think it's what's going to happen over the summer is going to be interesting in its own right. You know, this is the last match day podcast. We'll probably do at least one end of season review with different contributors, but I think it's going to be very interesting in the weeks and months ahead. And we're going to talk about the game, but obviously what happens going forward? What do we want to see going forward? Are we going to build on this? What does building mean? I put something on the forum this morning. Building on this for me means any money that we get from player sales, any money, and that could be a not insubstantial sum. If you say somebody came for Knight, and we're not going to stand in his way, Semenya gets sold, we get a sell-on. Any money that comes in should be invested in the team. And that means taking on the chin another £15 million to £20 million operating loss from day-to-day activities, which in my view, not in whole, but is partly due to the bloated infrastructure that is Bristol Sport. There we go. Rant over. Let's look at the teams. Dave, our team, we were without Rob Dickey, suspended. And does that suspension carry over into next season? Was it straight 3 game?
I believe it carries over as far as I'm aware.
So Rob Dickey is suspended. Joe Williams, torn ankle ligaments. I'm sure if he'd have been taken off because he didn't want to come off that first injury he got on Saturday, and then you lunged in for that tackle and then broke down again. We were up against it. What did you think of the changes that came in? They were predictable, were they? Or should it have been McGuane for Williams, almost a like-for-like replacement?
No, I thought it was perfectly reasonable, to be honest, in terms of the movement. There's always going to be the issue of Roberts at left wing back. And to be fair to him, he played well, which we'll come to later. But if you look at the setup, you have Bird as a central midfielder, which means that you're looking to make more progressive passes. You're looking to be adventurous, which is exactly what you need. You've got Earthy and Twine, big game players. I don't think there was anything wrong in how the lineup was as such. If anything, Pring was more of the risk because you're not exactly sure how fit he is. But to see him back in the side was a positive. The thing that stood out to me was how small we were. And it contributes.
You're sounding like Ian Gay there, because he used to have a thing about height, didn't he? Yeah.
But it's true. It's true. We don't look a big side at the moment, and I think it's a weakness that desperately needs to be addressed going forward, because thanks to Luton, teams are picking up on it, and it's like they can play their football. As long as you hang with them, you will get chances. And that's 5 corners in 4 games now. And the evidence is there for all to see. And the very thing that's going to happen in August is teams are going to go, try them out, see what they've learned. Corners on the keeper, have they improved?
Yeah, no, not good enough. Not good enough. Strange that Sheffield United couldn't sell out massive open spaces behind the goal. I mean, I guess that's what you expect when you're a yo-yo club, because as one of their fans put, assuming they win at Wembley, see you in a couple of seasons. Yeah, well, the atmosphere wasn't a patch on what we had at Ashton Gate a week ago, was it?
I mean, what can you say? I try to think, like, can I ever imagine a playoff semi-final that isn't sold out at Ashton Gate? And the answer is no. You know, you might have some seats around, but not to that extent that you're not up for it. You're not motivated. And okay, I get the argument that it's 3-0, but that implies that a lot of people just didn't turn up. I mean, what does it say about the fact that you are up and down and that you look at a playoff semi-final like meh? And maybe you could argue that the tickets were too expensive, but I certainly don't think you'd be seeing that at Ashton Gate anytime soon. No matter if we were a yo-yo club or not, the whole stadium will be sold out of no doubt every time without fail.
If we got to the Premier League, you mean? Yeah.
No, any playoff semi-final, whether we yo-yoed, whether it was every year, there is no way people would be anything other than up for a semi-final home leg.
Yeah.
If it would have been reversed, it would have been sold out and it would have been a party atmosphere. But it's true, we're not a yo-yo, but I don't think it would change. It would not change because it's a semi-final of the playoff. It's one of the royalty games of the season. And for me, it was very strange to see it not sold out. But I guess you could argue they were 3-0 up. They're saving money for Wembley and all the power to them.
Look, if somebody said to you at the start of the season, we'd be in the playoffs, Rovers and Cardiff get relegated, you'd look back and say, what a wonderful season. And it's like under Lee Johnson, every year was improvement. Didn't alter the fact that there were massive collapses. And I have to say that, you know, from QPR onwards to the end of the season, this has been nothing short of a collapse of biblical proportions to some extent.
The question is, how much of a success has the season been? You finished 6th in the league. There's no doubt it's been a success. The last 3 or 4 months, as I said at the beginning, they've given me some incredible moments, some incredible memories. I've enjoyed the football. I've gone from not feeling the love to looking forward to every game. The players, and Manning did that. Unfortunately, the things on the edges that give you success have been lacking. I saw Lansdowne, speaking about pathway, there hasn't really been one this season. Morrison not being introduced, so we had no idea how good he was when it mattered, led to McCorry not really being able to play on the right when Sykes got injured. Our season died when Sykes got injured because it's not so much that the squad was too small, it is that Manning doesn't rate the options available. Bell, he doesn't rate quite clearly. Cornick, he absolutely does not rate. Morrison, he does not rate for this season. Armstrong, sadly, isn't good enough for this level at this moment. That's a lot of your squad options gone. And that's where we are right now because of decisions made. How many playoff teams, I mean, maybe someone that wants to look it up, but how many teams do you know that go up having got weaker in January? Sheffield United added to players. As far as I'm aware, Coventry did as well. We got weaker. And what message does that send?
Well, the message was from the board that, guys, you overspent in the summer, and I don't mean the beginning of the summer, you overspent with the additions of McNally and Twine because, I'm convinced they thought Twine had gone and they got earthy and they pandered to what Manning wanted and brought Twine in. And as Dave Fevs put on one of his statistical pieces within the last 48 hours, Twine, and I'm a critic, I thought he did okay last night. We'll come on to the action in a minute. But Twine has only been played in 68% of the minutes that he's been fit to play. That is not good enough for your marquee signing, and therefore he has been a big disappointment. So Manning was punished in January for the overspends on Twine and McNally, and he had to get the wage bill down. No doubt about that.
This is what I don't want to this is where I take your point at the beginning about investing all the money in the squad, but do it with a plan. Like that open letter that they wrote in February saying that we intended to get 4, but we accidentally got 7. That's not a plan. That's just making it up as you go along. And ultimately, it's not good enough to overspend in the summer to then have to make cuts in January. If you are a serious football club, you just don't do that if you really have eyes on the prize. And I am of the opinion that those players were running on empty. You talk about Twine. He's got a knock, needs an operation. Many of them are not 100% because of the lack of rotation. Overall, Manning has done a good job. If you look at the points total, it is progression without doubt.
All right, let's talk about that points total, Dave, because again, this is a point somebody else put on the text feed a few minutes ago. We are 5 points better off than what we had last season, right? Now, how do you measure progress? Is progress where you finish in the league or the points? Because we've set the precedent now. We've got to the top 6. But next season, we could end up with 73 points, right, which is 5 more than this season, and not even get into the playoffs. So it's a good season, right? 68 points still didn't beat the best that we had in the early years back at this level. But it's like everything. Nobody seems to be accountable. You know, we wasted money on those forward signings without a shadow of a doubt. In fact, the money that we spent in the summer, with the exception of McNally, Bird was bought in January, but with the exception of McNally, you know, we've really got nothing to show for it. And, you know, Liam's getting a little bit frustrated. He's putting out the barbed comments that the minute you criticize, the minute you mutter any form of criticism in the directors of the ownership of this club, right, you're a dead man walking, in my view. Yeah, but there we go. Let's get into the action, Dave.
Wait, just to address what you've said, and before we move on, if you take it for the last 4 seasons, the 68 points, I believe it's good enough for 8th, 9th, and 8th. There's no doubt that that's progress. So how do you judge a season? On the one hand, if you look at the pathway, that would be a clear no. And we don't know how good Morrison is going into the next season, which opens up debates about who do we need to buy. The second question is, where did you finish in the table? In that respect, they have achieved. I wouldn't say they have massively overachieved because of the points total, but they have achieved something. The third question, did I enjoy the season? It was a roller coaster, but yes, I did, because for 4 months of this season, even though you had those 3 games at the end, you had attacking football, enjoyable football, learning football, the very things that were frustrating me. As some people have pointed out, it's just because I didn't like the football at the beginning of the season doesn't mean that everybody didn't. No. But from my point of view, I've really enjoyed the last 3 or 4 months of the season because what the team has been trying to do. So at this point, I feel proud of them, of what they've achieved through diversity, because the edges are wrong at the moment and everybody's got a little bit of blame for that. But going forward, my only hope is going into next season that they learn from this. Getting to the playoffs is not enough. You have to have eyes on winning them. And to show you one more little error, if we'd had finished 5th and not done so badly, we would not have had to play Sheffield United. And that is on us and the squad being too small or not.
Well, no, that was on team selection on the final day of the season against Preston. Because I'm convinced, he didn't play that well last night, but I'm convinced if we'd have started George Earthy on home against Preston, and we'd have got the points, we'd have been playing tonight and looking at probably playing Sheffield United. When people talk about the big boys, right, Sunderland and Coventry, who are playing tonight, are not parachute club payments, yeah? They're not parachute club payment clubs, yeah? And, yeah, it's all about how you spin it, because next season, if we finish 8th on 73 points. No, we'd probably finish 7th on 73. They'll say it's progress because they'll spin it to say it's based on points total, not league position. Again, they being the hierarchy of the club. Tomo said on here, 5 points more than last season, we've just said, so progress, but he's concerned for Liam if he's not given more support with proper recruitment. What do we mean by proper recruitment? It's pretty damning when the chairman last night, he should have shut up and not said anything before the game. Nothing's going to change on that side. Really? I won't hold my breath on that because I think there might be some changes, but there we go. Let's get into the action. Dave, I was doing my notes on a WhatsApp message to you that I pressed send at half time. And I did write the square root of F all on here. But, I mean, look, if you look at the early stages, we took the game to Sheffield United. No doubt about that. You could hear our fans above their fans, 2,000 of them. Well done, everybody who made the journey up there. But we had a chance on 10 minutes. if that shot from Twine goes in, it does make it a different game. And then Knight had a shot saved. Cooper also saved from Wells. We deserved that early goal based on how we played in the opening bits, didn't we?
I thought we were great in that first 20-25 minutes. I don't think we challenged the keeper enough in that period. We had a McCory header that went just over. Twine had that shot where I'm thinking just hit it, but I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt that he wasn't quite on balance or was trying to create something. You had a Knight shot, a Well shot from 25 yards, the almost over the keeper from a well-worked move. We were attacking. There was intensity. There was no holding back. They weren't going to die wondering, and it was good to see, you know. And part of me felt like I wish we'd gone like that in the first leg in a way, because they really couldn't cope with it. And some of it, I think, was because Sheffield United were just sitting off, happy to let the game go like that. They didn't want to overcommit because they knew the game was kind of done if we didn't score. And they also knew that we're not necessarily that potent. And it showed yesterday, because we should have scored in that opening. And a lot of football is about scoring when you're on top. And ultimately, we did fail to score when we were on top. And after that first 25 minutes, Sheffield United slowly crept into the game.
They played themselves back into the game. I mean, Max had one of those moments when, he did a poor clearance and Pring was there to the rescue. Burrows had a shot deflected wide. And then Max did what he is good at. He clawed at a couple, kept them out. The pressure was building, wasn't it? But let's have a shout out for Cam Pring, because for a player that wasn't expected to even feature again, I don't fault him for the goals last night. I thought he did well, certainly in the first half. Would you agree with that, Dave?
I wasn't even 100% that he was going to play. You know, I knew he wasn't perfect, and I have to say that in the first half, the way that we set up in terms of going forward, I think he's part of that, because he offers a different kind of outball on the left-hand side, and he's part of the reason why we're able to progress through the lines and look attacking. You can't say that he wasn't necessarily, obviously it's not his fault for the goal or the build-up behind it, but it comes about how we defend things as a unit. And just, if I can move us on to the goal. First, what did you think? What did you think of the goal, first of all?
Well, we've seen it before. I mean, Max is impeded, but not enough for the referee to award anything. I thought the referee did quite well last night, to be fair, in contrast to Oliver Langford. Somebody said on social media last night that if that's in the Premier League, then VAR probably does give it for impeding the goalkeeper. But, you know, I was going to say Zach Viner was playing in his more familiar right side, but everybody was berating Zach Viner for not going up with Kiefer Moore, a player that we were linked with certainly within the last 18 months to 2 years, who's everything that we don't seem to have in terms of physicality. So, yeah, the keeper was impeded and Kiefer Moore wasn't really challenged, was he? That was how I saw it.
The things that frustrate me about that corner is, in the opening minutes of the game, we had a corner and the referee gave a foul for a minor infringement. And if you're going to base it on that, then you have to be consistent. The other thing that annoys me is just before the corner, they had another corner where the person that saw Max, their striker, I think it was Cannon, is pulling Max. Somebody has to be in the referee's ear, like, look for this, look what he's doing. In my opinion, it is a foul, and you can easily argue that it stops him from getting there. But again, it comes down to our defensive setup. First of all, Max is nowhere near it. Second of all, he's not being protected, I think this time by Wales. You shouldn't have a striker able to do that. You've got to be more physical. We're talking about Max getting there, but it cannot be a case of Max has got to come out and win the ball or they score. There's got to be other bigger bodies on the line. And ultimately, we have been exploited in this end part of the season, because teams have sniffed it a weakness and now they're coming at us every single time, to the point that is now a fear. So as we'll come to later, there are other ways of corners are coming against us. 5 corners from 4 games is not good. It is a weakness that's been identified, and you can play all the attractive football that you like. Yeah. If you can't do the basics, which unfortunately we were not up to yesterday, and that includes the dark arts, you will get found out.
Well, you say about the dark arts as well, Dave. That's just back to this. We're not we're just too nice. There's not anybody grabbing. I mean, Ross McCrory is a mean beast with a lot of physicality there, but I thought he was quite subdued last night. We haven't got a Sean Taylor guy or in the mould of Terry Butcher with the headband and the blood pouring out. We just sort of, just seem. Mel, my partner, she said to me last night on the final whistle, our guys didn't seem down on their feet, didn't seem too upset about losing. There's almost this acceptance of, oh, well, we tried, it's good, we were there, and that's enough.
I think you're being a bit harsh there. I think they did care. They gave everything they could possibly give to try and put it back in that first half. There comes a point where you concede the fourth goal, and it's like, you have the beach, you deserve it. There's only so much you can give mentally, and it was all about that first half, and I think it would have hurt every one of them. And you could see it that mentally that second half they'd gone because they knew the tie had gone, and we knew the tie had gone. Fans knew the tie had gone, and I think they cared a lot. But I absolutely agree. As a defensive unit, we are too small. We are not set up well, and it can't keep happening that players are just like, right. You think about that first goal, it's a header from in your own 6-yard box. That shouldn't be happening. And I know that it's happening a lot in modern football, but teams are beginning to figure out how to deal with that. We're not.
Well, we're not responding. That's what you mean. We're not responding because, you coach your team to counteract what's happening there. So, that's calling out the...
What I saw yesterday was, for the first time, we set up and we actually put somebody, and it was Wells, on their striker to protect from Max. And they'd already thought about that. And it was clear, if you can, grab the shirt, or if it was said or unsaid, they were one step ahead. Max was not getting the space that you're supposed to get, but also he's not getting protection. And we've been very harsh on Max, and I don't think he's up to the standard required. But at the same time, you can't ask a keeper to do everything. There should be somebody. Viner needs to be stronger. If you're going to have zonal players around, they need to be attacking the ball. It is a collective mistake, and it's not all on Max.
No. Do you think the outcome would have been the same if Rob Dickie had stayed on the pitch and let Moore go through? Because, as we said in the last pod, you know what Oliver Langford's like, and you don't give people an opportunity to dish out red cards. So if he'd have just let Kiefer Moore through rather than wrestle him to the ground, because the general consensus, and that includes the so-called experts on Sky, lazy buggers they are, not a single representative on their panel for Bristol City. But if that goes in, do we go to Bramall Lane with a better situation, or are they always going to win by 4+ goals over 2 legs?
I don't think so. I think that both games against Sheffield United in the league, we gave a great account of ourselves.
Yeah.
We were in that first game. Essentially, my opinion is it's a red card. There's no debate about it, to be honest, from my mind. I struggle to see a reason why it could be a yellow, apart from the fact that you ruin a playoff game. But it was an error of our own making. Sheffield United didn't do anything spectacular to get that red card. It was a long ball. And ultimately, it comes down to the choice of Viner being left centre-back and confusion between him and Dickie. Once he goes through, we can argue about should he drag him down, but we've already made the mistake. And ultimately, it comes from us. It's not what Sheffield United did. It's what our team did.
Yeah, so, and that's backtracking, talking about the first goal conceded in the game. So into the second half, we're now 0-4 down on Ag. We have a chance right at the start of the second half where Scotty Twine, he of the expertly struck free kick, good position for him. At least he drew a save from Cooper, didn't he?
He did. I know he's one again that's carrying an injury. Going forward to next season, we need to see more from him. It's not enough to be in the side based on your prowess from around the box, and I don't think he scored one for a while. Yes, he's very dangerous from them. Yes, he's picked up points. It's fair to say without some of those goals, we wouldn't have made the playoffs. But from your marquee signing, from your main number 10, you certainly need to see more from them. But it's difficult to judge him in this last, I don't know, however long, because he's not fully fit. And you're not going to play a fully fit game player every game. And watching him yesterday, he was busy in the first half. But as the second half went on, you could see that he he was not 90 minutes match fit. So it's very difficult to judge his ending to the season.
But if he's not fully fit, why play him? Because he's been in this injurious state for at least half the time. Well, slight exaggeration. Between 30 and 40% of the time he's been here. When he started, when he was on loan, he picked up an injury. Yeah. Not good enough.
This is the issue you've got when you've got a squad that ultimately too many of the players Manning doesn't rate. You're relying on a core to get you through, and they have got you through. And you could argue that why not play Mehmeti there? Why not play you there yesterday? But ultimately, he must have felt like, give me 60 minutes, give me what you can. I don't think he was bad yesterday, but going forward, I expect much more from Twine. That's a season and a half now, and from your attacking midfielder, I would put Earthy's overall contribution from the second half of the season. I think Bird's been better there. Mehmeti, while been disappointing in the second half, I would say he was 3. I would say that Twine has been the 4th best attacking midfielder this season. You need more. It's simple as that. You need more. The question is, can he play in this particular system with in a 3-4-2-1? He works better when he is the man in the middle with people to play off. If he's playing as a double 10, where's your pace? If you add wing backs that will attack, and to take it forward yesterday, Roberts was one of our best players yesterday because he was advanced and he was basically told, stay forward, get the ball in the box. But when did you see Roberts take someone on? And in someone like Scott Twine's case, he needs those players with pace out wide to play them in. We don't have those options with wing backs, and I'm not sure he is suited to playing this formation because he hasn't got the pace for the press and there aren't enough options around him for him to be feeding players in. Max Bird does it differently from deeper in a very effective way, but this way of playing doesn't suit Twine at all.
I just want to pick up on a point Lee Church made a few moments ago, coming up on a text feed, saying, is Manning going to sign players for the formation he wants to play? It really does beg the bloody question why we signed Yu Hirakawa, doesn't it? Who's a winger. He ain't a wing back. Yu Hirakawa.
What I would like to see going forward is more flexibility between the 4-2-3-1 or whatever variation you want to play and the 3 at the back. I don't think if we've signed you in January, it doesn't make sense that we're committing absolutely to this formation. I would like to see variation between the two. I don't necessarily agree that Manning is not flexible because we have switched. But ultimately, a player like you're not going to get the best out of him in this formation. Mehmeti is the same. He scored most of his contributions came from the 4-2-3-1. He was okay when we first made the switch, but he's gradually got less effective. And I think that, first of all, you need to decide, are we committing to one or are we going to be flexible with the both of them? Because the reality is, and I've been saying this anyway, once you strip back from the best 11, this formation starts to struggle with the players we have available.
Substitutions come in, as they usually do, on the hour. Bird, who's looked very knackered. I mean, he's got a very languid style at the best of time. Bird, Twine going off, and Earthy. On comes Hirakawa, Mehmeti, and Maguane. Well, Maguane gives you a little bit of steel. Mehmeti on current form and Hirakawa overall. It doesn't exactly lift you, does it, when you still got one man up front in Naki?
No, I mean it's difficult to be. Well, you've missed the goal, the second goal for.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. Because you made it. Let's talk about the second goal. I mean, that was how to deal with a corner, wasn't it? Yeah.
It's a bit of both because when luck is not your friend and football doesn't like you, it really rams it down your throat. A deflected goal like that is unlucky, but you make your own luck. And what tends to happen is when you're under pressure, a ball's going in your own 6-yard box, your players get a bit deeper, a bit deeper, a bit deeper. You leave yourself open to inventiveness. And it was far better than our first half corner attempt at something mildly similar. And ultimately, it's a very, very lucky deflected corner. But you make your own luck, and very much by getting him in that position for pretty much a free shot. Sometimes when you shoot, that's actually what happens. Deflections are part of football. it's not like, oh my God, I can't believe we considered a deflection. You put yourself in position, you take your shot, you see what happens. And unfortunately, that was 5 corners in 4 games we've conceded from. And I really hope that we wake up and work. Well, I'm sure we will work on that over the summer.
Yeah. Talking about 5 goals in 4 games sounds bad. We're going to take you back to, I think it was 92-93 season when Andy Cole was playing back in the day. And that was right, 92-93, yeah. And I went to Brentford and it was pissing down with rain, right? And we lost 4-0. This was when it was open at one end of Brentford's ground. And 3 of their goals came from bloody corners, ball in, all headers, yeah. And so, I've seen worse.
Well, yeah. But as an overall for the season, both attacking and defensively, do you think we've been good enough from corners and set pieces apart from Twine? Would you say we've been particularly dangerous going forward from them? I don't remember too many corners that we've scored from. Just from the memory, I can't say, wow, every time we get a corner, we feel dangerous. And yet, when we concede one, it feels like there's a threat every single time.
Every time somebody has a corner against us in the current zonal marking, not done very well approach that we have. You're right. And sorry, I'd forgotten about the second goal. I mean, and then at 5-0 on Ag, you're suddenly thinking, shit, are they going to run up a cricket score? But we stemmed it for a good 30 minutes. We come on to the third goal. That came on the 83rd. We made the substitutions, though, on the 59th minute. I said Bird, Twine and Earthy going off, Maguire, Mehmeti and Hirakawa coming on. I don't agree with Earthy going off, but that's it. I mean, the people... Well, let's look at the other subs as well. Cam Pring lasted until the 68th minute, and then slap in the face for Sinclair Armstrong, not that if ever he needed one. Good old Harry Boy comes on with 80 minutes, maybe looking for a consolation goal.
I have to say that substitution annoyed me a little bit. I know the game is gone by then, and it's not about that, but I remember going back to at some point in December and January, you asked me about Cornick, and I said he should be nowhere near the side.
Yeah.
Against Millwall, he comes on and he does something that we have been missing: a flick on round the back and goal, and you're thinking, wow, the guy has stepped up. He deserves an opportunity here. And essentially, since then, he had 1 sub appearance and then nothing. To put him on yesterday is like, what, when the season's gone? If you're really going to do that, bring Morrison on. There's an opportunity for Morrison to get.
Let me talk about, I got to bring a comment here that Lee Churches has just said, Ron Atkinson is a threat from corners. I think Ron Atkinson at 80 could probably defend corners a bit better than that we have. But I think, Lee, there you mean Rob Atkinson. But sorry to interrupt you there.
No, it's okay.
That made me laugh.
It's quite good. No, yeah. I think that was an opportunity for Morrison to get. If you're talking about giving minutes, put Morrison in there. See what he delivers in that situation.
But that's the thing. That's the thing, isn't it? Because on 68 minutes, the game's gone, right? And you bring on, Sam Bell, right? Why? Surely Morrison is no more of a defensive liability than Sam Bell is. I mean, Sam Bell's ineptitude as a wing-back cost us the games at Sunderland and Sheffield United away when he was exposed for his lack of...
But I also think the game has gone at that point. There's also no point in being too frustrated by the subs, because ultimately there are bigger things in play. And like I said, the 80th minute one just annoys me, because I would have felt like, give Morrison some time. It's just, for me, that's frustrating, because now you start to look forward. We actually... As fans, we've seen Morrison a little bit and thought, oh, I like what I see. But we haven't seen enough to know whether or not we need extra reinforcements in the left wing back role, because right now we do. Because their next goal is kind of part of it.
Yeah, take us through that next goal, Dave, because I'll be honest, I'd sort of switched off by then.
Well, part of it is to do with the positional manipulation. They've moved it around and they've played a ball in down the side, which has allowed them to come at pace and also have a runner. And part of that is because your energy is dropped. You're off the pace a little bit. So some of it is on us, because ultimately we're just not fully at the races and probably a little bit on the beach by that point. But it just shows if you manipulate space and exploit it with pace, that kind of goal happens. And it's not a goal that you see from us very often. And that's the point of yesterday's of the 3 goals essentially from corners because we're too small, exploiting pace down the channel and making most of it from runners in the middle. Those were our weaknesses very much exploited yesterday.
And yeah, exploited. Okay, so the season's over. Some people thought it was over. It is now. I thought it was over on Friday or Thursday, whenever we play. It is now. Before we talk about what the future holds, let's look at the other games, Sunderland and Coventry. Sunderland came back with goals at the weekend from 2 of their star players who've been misfiring, like the whole team of late, and Coventry got an equaliser, so an error. Who do you think is going to win at the Stadium of Light tonight?
To be honest with you, I quite fancy Sunderland, and I reckon it will be. I think Sunderland might well get promoted. You know, I just have a sneaky feeling that it's Sunderland that go up, and not Sheffield United. They've had an awful run of form to end the season. But if they do get to that final, I think they'll beat Sheffield United. I don't know why. I think
they've probably got more going for it in their crowds, to be honest. But there we go. All right, look. Looking forward, I mean, Chris Northey's got a point here on the text feed. He said, "I thought Armstrong being kept on the bench was Manning's message to the board to get a proper Championship striker in urgently." Somebody else has said that Manning. They're not his players because the recruitment is a collective. Manning was involved in the signing of all the players that have come in since he's been here. And if he does have the ultimate say, then, he's only got himself to blame.
I don't think he does have he has a say, but not the ultimate say. And he's been clear from that with the way for the last few weeks, if not a month, he's been talking about and making it clear getting rid of players in January was not his decision and not his preference. He's been very, very clear on that, which says that he doesn't have the ultimate final say on what happens. Going forward,
Who does then, Dave?
Like you said, it's a collective, so it's difficult to pin it on anybody. But when you have a manager coming out and saying our squad, what happened in January, you read between the lines. He's obviously involved, I would imagine. If you imagine how it works and hypothesizing, if someone comes to you and say you can have this player and you prefer one, you've had input, but you haven't necessarily had the whole input. Scott Twine was one of his players. I don't know how much of a say he had in Armstrong and Fally, but if he was presented and said your choice is between Armstrong or this guy, maybe he selected him for whatever reason. I would be surprised if he has zero input. But I also don't necessarily think it's all on him. It's a collective, which means everybody's to blame, but nobody's to blame. And that's how it works when you have a collective.
But I mean, it's a difficult one. I was in a situation once many, 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 many years ago, personal situation, where I was sat there with 3 job offers. And I said to one of them, I said, look, I'm not going to take your job because I don't feel comfortable for these reasons. But I said, I don't know which of the other 2 to take. And the person who I turned down and rejected for the offer they made to me, he said, you don't have to take either. Yeah. And that's 30 years ago, that advice. And, it was best advice I ever received in a manner of speaking. Yeah. Manning could just say, no, I don't want to sign anybody, and if you think about it, for the amount of good they've been, we might as well have persevered with bloody Seb Palmer-Holden and Josh Stokes,
But that comes down to your trust in the process, shall we say. People doing their job, the scouting networks, who they provide you with. Remember, part of Manning's remit is to make players better, to train them. Ultimately, as a manager, if you say, I want neither, you're going to leave yourself even shorter. I don't think it was his choice at all to make the squad weaker in January. If you ask him, what do you want? I'm absolutely sure he will tell you he wants a better centre forward, of no doubt. I'm not sure Wells will be here next season by comments and things as though it's body language.
Yeah, I reckon reading between the lines on that, I think Wells might be off to the MLS. I think he'd be good at that level.
Lansdowne was pretty clear in his comments yesterday, but literally saying, as you can see, we need a centre forward. But it comes down to more than that, because a centre forward is needed. Earthy's probably going. I'm not sure he will come back here. I
don't think. I mean, George Earthy, good though he is, I would like to see Josh Stokes given a chance. I know he's playing at a lower level of football in a relegation on a relegation threatened in a relegated team. But I'd sooner see us develop a Josh Stokes than have George Earthy back, because he's good. But
so look,
if Jason Knight went, I would welcome George Earthy back. They're different players, but Earthy's got a level of energy.
So to give you an example, going into next season, if you were to go Stokes, because I agree with you, I haven't seen him play that often, but those that do watch him play say he's been great. If you have Stokes and Bird as your attacking midfielders next season, as your right wing back, you have Sykes or McCrory. That's a couple of boxes ticked.
And your left wing backs, Pring or Roberts.
We need more support in the left wing back position. Pring gets a lot of injuries. I'm not sure his body is made to be a left wing back, and Roberts absolutely isn't. You would have Morrison and one other to play there. So a left wing back is absolutely needed. All of a sudden, you've got the remit of that part of the team. Knight, I'm not sure he will stay unless he signs a new contract. You're 2 years out, peak value. If you do want to make moves and bring in other players, sadly, you do need to think about selling if he doesn't sign a new contract. My preference, he signs a longer contract and he stays. If he doesn't, you need to start thinking, is this the max value, and working it out. If he stays, great. We do need recruitments there, because ultimately, Williams and McGuane is not a like for like. You could argue that Knight and Williams is what for one position. You need more strength there. But the area that we need to improve is defensively. We have Dickey there. Tanner, for me, is not a right centre-back. He is a right-back. He's not suited to that.
But he's a right-back. So he's a right-back that if we're playing with wing-backs, then Tanner doesn't get a look in.
No, that's the point. It's about the formation, because as a right back, I really like him. As a right centre back, he's just not tall enough for starters.
Yeah,
and
he gets pulling off the ball. I mean, I watched the. If you look at the build up to Sheffield's first goal on the home leg, which leads with Dickey. I mean, Tanner's standing 3 yards off the player that does the flick on tonight, and I think I said on the pod after Sheffield at home, I said weak as piss, but then very good in a one-on-one defensive situation when he's playing as a right back.
But you see, this is the thing that you don't want to see, because it's all great that players can do a job, but when you've got Tanner as the right centre back that can do a job, Viner is the left centre back that can do a job. If you've got so many players doing that in the most stressful moments of football, you make mistakes and get found out. We need centre back recruitment. What's happening with Atkinson? Does Manning rate him? Is the question.
Well, it was interesting that Lansdowne made a comment that we might as well let Atkinson go out on loan because the manager's not going to play him. He said that on Radio Bristol last night.
This is what I heard. Maybe it was out of context because he didn't believe he was fit enough, which is fair enough. But if he doesn't rate him, okay, we need it. If you're asking me what I think we need, goalkeeper, left centre-back, left wing-back, striker. They are the essentials.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I'd agree with you there. Now, interesting, you made a comment a second ago, Dave, about making players better. He's been in charge at Ashton Gate now for 18 months, Liam Manning. Yeah. Who has he made a better player through his coaching and ability? His coaching, because he's a coach. He's not a manager, he's a coach. Who's got better?
I would say Jason Knight, fundamentally better. Jason Knight has gone from a player that I would think of as he needs to be the worst player in your side because he is a 7 out of 10 man with lots of energy to a fundamental part of the side. He is definitely a better player. I think Max Bird has grown into himself through the season and he's made a better player in that way. Sykes coming back into the side is even more dangerous than the player I remember. Outside of that, it's the collective. It's buying into the second half of the season way of playing. If you'd have asked me this question at Christmas, I would have said the problem is what they're being asked to do. Since February, we're looking to get it forward. He's playing players most of the players into their strength areas. The issue with Manning and his biggest weakness is too often he's trying to fill a hole with a player that's just not suited there. It gets very tiring watching Roberts as a left wing back. Not offering enough going forward. Yes, he can put a ball in, but that's not enough. You need to be able to go at players. Persevering with Viner. I don't think Viner has got better this season. But I've enjoyed the team collective in the second half of the season. So I'm not going to say that he hasn't improved players, because he clearly has. But I would say the main one that he's improved is Knight, because Knight has gone from, like I said, the 7 out of 10 to a fundamental piece.
Interesting. I mean, you look at somebody like Knight, and I say Knight's got it in him. So as he improved because of Manning, and I'm not going to say he's improved despite Manning, but as he improved, if you look at, I'm just trying to think of another player in the team, right? And you've not mentioned him. We've not mentioned him at all. And he's almost become a bit of a forgotten man. Mehmeti. Mehmeti couldn't score in a brothel with his goal-scoring record, but he got 12 goals. Where's the psycho? And somebody else has said on here, have we got a sports psychologist on the team? That's what one of the things that cost Danny Wilson his job back in 2004, actually, that they were told to get rid of the sports psychologist. Mehmeti, surely making him better is to build him up as a person such that the confidence he had in the first half of the season is replicated, because he's literally fallen off a cliff, Mehmeti's form, hasn't it?
Some players need to play every game, and as soon as he wasn't in the side and Earthy was, you're looking at issues. And again, is he a number 10? When you watch Mehmeti play, do you? He did most of his work pre-Christmas. Since Christmas, he's had some very, very good games. The Stoke game comes to mind. But how many great games can you say post-Christmas? I don't know how many goals he scored in that period that were from open play and not penalties. But ultimately, his best work came in the 4-2-3-1. Some of that tipped over because you're a confidence player. The moment the confidence dipped a bit, we've got to the point with Mehmeti that he's second top goal scorer in the season. But can you really say he's now that much more progressed from this time last season? We've seen his highs. Unfortunately, he's not really been much of a contributor in the last couple of months. He's kind of, I wouldn't say anonymous, but he's not been that same big threat. He's looked okay at times, but not what he was doing.
Yeah. And Mehmeti, he's one of a whole crop of players who are out of contract next summer. Yes. Next summer, we're talking summer 26. And come summer 26, they can all walk out through the door. They can all walk out the door for nothing. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Jason Knight is in that. No, Jason Knight's summer 27.
Exactly, yeah? And Bird. Yeah.
And Bird. But we've got some hard... never mind bringing players in, we've got some hard thinking to do in terms of, the players that we want to keep. We've got to be giving them terms now. And if they won't sign new terms now, then, and Mehmeti is one of that group, would you be upset if Mehmeti left? And what value would you place on Mehmeti right here, right now?
Look, you don't want your best players leaving for free. First of all, to address that, that's my point with Knight. You're 2 years out, you're at peak value. And if you do want to have additions to the squad and get the best that you can, you actually need money to do that. I know we talk about the Semenyo things as well, and that's why, in a way, it's the time is now. From Mehmeti, I don't know how much money you would get, but if it won't sign a new contract, you look to do it. You look to upgrade. You can't just let lots of players see out their contract. We are a championship team. If you want to keep building and building, you cannot let your better contributors play for free. Just go. Somebody will pick him up. Ultimately, would I be happy if Mehmeti stayed? Yes, but again, I would want him to sign a contract. You don't need to hear this. The laundry aired like he is or he isn't. It's just do the business, decide on the players that you want. It's not for me, it's not for anybody to say who we should and shouldn't keep. What I want to see this summer is to feel like they have a plan. They're going to stick to that plan, and it's an ambitious plan, not just we're trying to shop where no one else is looking, because everybody's looking there. This is the new pot of gold. You're not reinventing the market. But ultimately, I don't want to hear next January, we meant 4, but we got 7. And that's why I don't fully agree with you about investing everything now. Have a little bit, but be ready for January.
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember where I read this, but in fact, it might even have been a post that I did back in 2018 or something like that. But when Steve, that's right, it was to do with Cottrell's time. And when Cottrell got us promoted, it was, I believe he said to Lansdowne, I read it somewhere, am I shopping in Aldi or am I shopping in Waitrose? Yeah. And Lansdowne's view was, I don't want you to shop in either. I want you to go to who's supplying those people to Aldi and Waitrose. In other words, get them beforehand. Interestingly, we could have picked up Steve Maguire, right? I'm not a great fan of his. He was a player linked with us at the start of that season. We could have picked up Steve Maguire for about 4 or 5 million, maybe. This is 10 years ago. He went for, 40 million a couple of seasons later. And it is gambling all the time, isn't it? I mean, we went and got 2 punts in the summer with Mayulu and Armstrong.
My issue with, for example, Armstrong, I remember an interview from last January, 2024 January, where Tinian said, we're looking for a big, strong striker who's got pace. And as soon as we signed Armstrong, it's fitting the bill. Because the problem is that they got it into their mind that it's easy. You just pick up the attributes and you improve them. Whereas if you watch football enough, what's the hardest thing there is to do in football? Score goals. Once you score goals, certain attributes, you can teach other things. And we've been we've been found wanting in that area. And if you look at Fally, that Millwall game was a con trick. Since that goal, after that, it was like, what's he doing here? He doesn't suit. You can fully understand why they signed Armstrong, because they believed that by signing the attributes, all of a sudden, you can teach someone to score goals. And the guy just doesn't know how to score goals. It's right there. And unfortunately, this could cause issues going forward, because they might have been punts, but they weren't uber cheap punts.
No, and we've got them. And if somebody doesn't want to buy them, we've got their wages round our neck for 4 years, because I think they were signed on 4-year contracts.
Harry Maguire. By the way, just to call out, you made the mistake too with Stephen Maguire. Harry Maguire.
Oh, there you go. Okay, this ambition. I mean, we've sold 16,000, certainly between 15 and 16,000 season tickets. A lot of people were seduced by the fact that they thought we might just make it. And next season, the attendances will look good because we count the tickets sold. We don't count the number of empty seats. I put a post up last night on X, and I got slated for it, to be quite honest. And it was just, I put, defeat is not failure, said Danny Wilson after the playoff final defeat to Brighton in 2004. A week later, he'd gone, and Lansdowne then uttered his famous phrase, judge me on Tinian, as he appointed the legend as boss. 21 years later, haven't really progressed much, have we? And I got absolutely, compared to some people, I don't call it being slaughtered, but I had the happy clappy brigade out on me like nobody's business, working really on the basis of, don't you know we're an established championship club? Yes, I do. But back there 21 years ago, Bournemouth, Brentford and Brighton, they were all where we were. I want some of that. And as I said, if I have to wait, I know I don't look it, if I have to wait another 17 years to get to the bloody playoffs, I'm going to be 86. I might not even get that far. So there seems to be this acceptance of mediocrity, we're an established shape, let's be happy, and I think what was it XR Robbins, Paul, he put up there, it was really nice that the PA gave our fans some credit for sticking with us all the way through, and what have you, and that's part of the problem. We're too bloody nice as a club. I couldn't give a flying whatever that we're great on our green credentials and sustainability. We're not great at sustainability on the bloody pitch. So how are we going to break out of this cycle, Dave? And we got a chairman that has said, now that everybody's coughed up their cash, right? Well, nothing's changing. I'm happy with the way we do our recruitment. Jesus.
To a degree, I think you all have points. First of all, for yesterday, the timing, David, the timing, it's a raw day. And ultimately, myself, I did feel pride in that side. Even when they'd lost 6-0, I felt a sense of pride and sadness that they didn't deserve it. On the other hand, you are right, as a club, we are too nice and it's reflective on the pitch. They are a nice bunch of players. And then we come up against a team like Sheffield United and we essentially lose because of corners. You know, it's one of those mixtures of bits. I agree with what other people are saying in terms of, like you said, to bring him into it, what Exiled Robin was saying. At the end of the day, a lot of fans went up there to support the team. And that's what football is all about. Ashton Gate is in a better place at the end of this season than it was at the start of the season. If you spoke to the 20-year-old me, or to the me of 20 years ago and said, this is where we would be, I would have been, wow, that's progression. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, you're right as well, because once you reach that progression, like in August, I'm not going to be motivated to, can't wait to be mid-table. That's not, I watch football for many reasons. Watching City is about a love, about an emotion, but it's also about a dream of watching them play in the Premier League for one day. You know, that's what I want to see. I want to feel like the club is ambitious in doing that. I think the players were. I think Manning was. But I think that the club think that there are shortcuts to getting there. And there aren't. Sometimes you have to invest a little bit and sometimes you have to be imaginative. Yeah. It's not just one way. And for me, the most striking comment from Lansdowne was when he spoke about advancing the pathway. And it's like, your hand's not on the button because that is not what has happened this season.
That is not what's happened.
Anything, you know? And ultimately, to say those words was a bit of a lie because that's not happened.
No.
However,
sorry, Dave, carry on.
Last thing. This season has been a positive. It's not all negative. The condition of that is that next season we build on it and understand why we haven't made the next step and make sure that if it's not next season or the season after, we keep building and we come back stronger.
Yeah. Just pick up another comment. Simon Devlin, this was on X last night or this morning, in reply to my comment of, tolerance. He said, people take for granted how lucky we are to be an average championship club. How effing lucky we are. And I just put, I'm sure Brentford, Brighton and Bournemouth fans feel lucky to be average Premier League clubs, which they are.
And
the tolerance of mediocrity is shocking.
Luton did it. Luton.
Well, Luton, no, but they're back. And people say, but look at Luton now. They're back in League One. What would everybody give for just one season? I was old enough to have the 4 seasons, but it's 45 bloody years ago, right? I just like one, maybe 2 more seasons, to get there. But you say, Dave, how are we going to build on this season? What needs to be done? If the owner, whichever way you cut it, he calls all the shots. If the owner says nothing's going to change, right? Where is the hope that we will build on this rather than lose our top player? And whilst I wouldn't be personally overly bothered, lose the coach that got us to our best position in 17 years.
Does he mean nothing is going to change? Just to present the other side of the argument, does he mean that nothing's going to change, or does he mean by those words that we believe in what we're doing? Because if
he believes in what we're doing, but we know, how do we make that next step forward?
So just to present an opening of next season, imagine that we start the season with Morrison as the left wing back on opening day, and Josh Stokes and Bird are the attacking midfielders with Knight and Williams behind, and our new shiny centre forward who scores 2 goals on the opening day. All of a sudden, you're thinking, pathways in the game, we have a goal scorer, something could happen this season. This summer is absolutely vital. If this summer goes well, we're no longer an established championship team. We are a team looking to the positions above, where they stop being this massive achievement and they start to be our expectation. Because my expectation for next season is top 6. I will accept just finishing out on the last day. But I want to feel like that is on every single step of the way.
That's true. Dave, you make a very good point there, because, the fact of the matter is, the start of the season, the objective was to be in or around the playoffs. And what's happened, we've had a taste of success.
Yes.
Yeah. If we'd have gone into the Preston game needing a win to get 6th and we got a draw, everybody would say, well, we didn't do too bad. We started the season poorly. We've had good home form. I mean, and that's a point. That is a point. Why are we so crap away? Again, that's down to the coaching. We've won 2 away games in 6 months.
But it's
2 away games out of 20. Not
it's
good
mentality. It's mentality. And again, it's something that I hope Manning looks at, reflects on. listens to his own words and thinks, how do I build on that? Because it was his words around Christmas, I believe. You make home a fortress. He's done that. Fair play. I didn't think it was. I don't remember such a run of fixtures where you're knocking off playoff competitors not so easily, but so dramatically and so entertainingly, shall we say?
No, I think, what was it, 13 home wins this season, excluding the playoff game.
If you imagine,
that's pretty good. I don't think we've achieved that number in the last 10 years. And
no, exactly. So what's
you'd have to go way back, because it did used to be, for very many years, Fortress Ashton Gate. Then I would say from COVID times onwards, we were a better away side. I think in one discrete 12-month period, spanning 2 seasons, I think only Liverpool accumulated more points on the road than we did. Yeah, sadly, we weren't accumulating them at home to the same degree. But if you take a look at it in terms of the setup, the formation about attacking it, the question for Manning, I imagine it's in his in tray, is how do I maintain this home way, this home form, and pick up more points away from home? Well, first of all, you're going to have less of the ball. There's going to be more of an onus on the opposition, because there always is. Yeah,
that's one area. How do you come up against the teams that like to go long, like to ask you those kinds of questions? Because ultimately, Millwall, we passed the test. Luton, we did not. You do not win every away game. Other teams are allowed to win football matches. It happens. But ultimately, we need to see more from them away from home, because we haven't seen enough this season. And that, in a way, was the downfall. Would it have affected what happened in the playoffs? It's hard to say. But it could be part of the difference between finishing 6th and 5th. And if you want to make this the standard, as I said before, it's around the edges, and the away form isn't even an edge. It's a crucial part.
Yeah. I mean, look, the fact of the matter is, if we'd have had a modicum of decent form after Sunderland, in other words, we got 9 points. We got 1 point from the last 9 available, didn't we? Yeah, because we lost to Leeds, lost to Luton, lost to Leeds, and then drew. That wasn't good enough. If we'd have just got 1 extra point, got a point at Luton, we'd have been in 5th, and we wouldn't be having the conversation we're having this morning, because the game, we'd have been looking forward to the match at Stadium of Light tonight. Here's an interesting one for you. It's got nothing really to do with football, or it could have done. I put a post up on OTIB yesterday about it. The Bristol and Bath big day out at Cardiff, 50,000 fans there. And, I actually put a post on. I responded to a post that Gavin Marshall had put on LinkedIn, that what a success it was. And if you think about it, Ashton Gate capacity 27,000 my arse, right? I mean, all these big attendances, we've not nudged 26. We got close. Let's call it 26. All right, it's not much difference from 27. But if, let's say, we got to the Premier League, and if not now, sometime in the future. And it's shades of the 39th game that they were talking about with the Premier League, playing it over in bloody Florida. But, Cardiff isn't quite as far as Florida, and there's a nice stadium over there. And if you had one season in the top flight, how would you feel if City said that Arsenal, Liverpool, Man City, Man United, despite their lowly Premier League position, but we're going to play 5 games at the Millennium, right? In our first season back, right?
Was last night not depressing enough? Have you got to put me through this question?
No, I'm not talking. But purely financially,
I'm joking.
On the basis, if we'd have gone up, that's why everybody was welcoming Bristol City to the Premier League, because they all thought we're going to get 6 points, because we're going to get dipped every week, right? So on the principle that, well, let's just take our punishment and let's make more money, how would you have felt if they'd have said we're going to play 5 home games at the Millennium, when 20,000 Man United supporters who live in bloody London, nowhere near Manchester, can all toddle off down to Wales, and 30,000 City fans can go over there and raise the roof? How would you feel about that?
Okay. Other sports do it because they need to. Other sports do it because it's their moment in the public eye of publicity. Rugby League does it in Newcastle now, I believe. Rugby does it, and they switched it from Twickenham because it was Bristol Bath. Would I want to see it in the Premier League or the Championship? Absolutely not. We don't need to do that. We play one team, we play two teams, one home game, one away game. That's how it is, and that's how it should be, and it's what makes the sport so beautiful. However, if you're really asking me about having a game there, make it their game there. Why does it have to be the home game? Are you really telling me that you would finally get there? You get these teams at home. You want to get up for it. Now we're going to go to Cardiff. I'm not a fan of it. I don't like that kind of stuff. You know, when they talk about taking games to America, I don't get it.
No, I don't.
You play your home games at home. That's how it works. The only exception is if you are rebuilding a stadium and you need to play somewhere else while you're doing it. But there's no excuse for saying, let's go to Cardiff for one of our home games. I wouldn't be a fan.
No, I agree. I wouldn't. But, if Bristol Sport deemed it that, so be it. And interestingly, we've been denied any concerts at Ashton Gate this summer because, I'm sure you know this, that the women's rugby is being played at Ashton Gate. And I'm wondering right at the start of next season or early enough, I wonder whether we will be asking for a slight bias to having fixtures away from Ashton Gate at the start of next season because we're accommodating the women's rugby. And by that, because when you play World Cup rugby matches, you have to have signage all around the ground that's very different to what we have. So if the season starts, I don't know, on August the 5th, I don't know, I should have looked this up. I don't know when the rugby dates are, but, it's not our stadium. We play there as tenants of Bristol Sport through the Pula Empire, whatever that is, right? But, we might say, look, we want our first 9 games, can we have just 3 of them at home, please, on these dates, so that we don't have to disrupt the setup for the rugby, yeah? And with our away form, if 3 out of the first 9 games were at home, and it's not, that's quite a material difference because the alternative is 4 and 5, but 3 and 6 is quite different. We could go, and with our crap away form, we could almost be giving ourselves a mountain to climb in terms of getting back into it because we've done that. I'm not saying we will, but
I mean, I would hope that if they do something like that, to be honest, I don't really know enough to comment properly, but I don't even know how many games are at Ashton Gate, to be honest. But I know that some games are there. And if you're going to have that, I would hope that we ask for the couple of away games that you always get. You always get 2 games away from home back to back at some point. So I would hope that there is a way around it where we don't have too many away games because you do pay a price. If you have that many, you're playing catch up again. And this season, we went to the well. We started the season behind. And I know we're looking really forward now, but you can't keep going to the well. You're going to need to start well. It is just an easier way. And as Weston Reddish just said, we know we're going to play away because of the Bloom Fiesta. Yeah. It is possible to make things work, but I would hope that we're not going to have too many games back to back away from home. But I don't know when the games are to comment more.
No, well, maybe we can look that up. But look, I think we're done for today.
Can I just say something?
Go on, Dave.
Thank you for everybody to being so nice to me this season. I didn't start the season expecting to come onto a podcast, and everybody's been so nice to me. I've had so many messages telling me they enjoy listening to me. For me, it's an honor. I enjoy coming on. I enjoy speaking to you. I enjoy reading the comments, and it's really given me something extra for Bristol City to be participating in this podcast. And I cannot say thank you to you and to every single person that participates and the people that write to me to say how much they enjoy it, to the point that people are telling me that they speak to their parents, their brother or sister about what we speak about on the pod, and it's part of their routine. And that for me was such a powerful thing to read. And all I can say is thank you to everybody.
No, well, I say thank you as well, Dave, because, I started the podcast 5 years ago this summer in June 2020. And, the way it's built, particularly over the last 12 months, is phenomenal. You've been a big part of that since the turn of the year. So you've been a great addition. Mark Tovey, who's still a little bit poorly, but Mark's going to be back. This isn't our final one of the season, because I'm sure we'll do a couple of end of season reviews. And who knows, in the next week to 10 days, there might be some developments off the field that could be worthy of comment by themselves. But Dave, you've been a great addition. I know I've enjoyed having the Suttons on, father and son, Tom and Neil's off to college. So sorry, Neil, Tom's off to college. So we won't be using so much of him. Paul Hunt, who's been on a few times, and other people. And look, anybody who wants to come on, just drop me a DM on X. And it works best, I think, when there's me plus 3. Starts to get a little bit unwieldy. I think Dave's come on so much that I've done 57 podcasts this season. That's 57 games and the occasional, specials that we've done as well. So I know Dave and I are going to be working on some of the technical aspects, which is the faffy bit that we do. So I'm sure Dave will be hosting at least one podcast next season. It's everybody who's watched us, on YouTube. I think we get more people watching than listening now. I think with 5,000 people watched the Leeds YouTube episode that we did, and 2,500 the first leg of Sheffield. And people obviously listen on wherever they get their podcasts from. I think some people probably watch a bit of us and can't bear it, and then prefer to listening to it when they're out walking the dog. But if you enjoy listening as much as we enjoy doing it, then that is good. That is good to know. And yeah, we get critics on there. It wouldn't be a podcast if we didn't get people slagging us off, saying we don't know what we're talking about, etc., etc., etc. But we're done for now. Dave, I will be in touch with you within the next 7 days, because we'll get something sorted out for an end of season review, and we get probably Gary Hours or Chris Honor on having a little chat with us as well. Ellie's been on a few times. Get Ellie on as well. But for now, the dust has settled. The season 24-25 is over. And everybody, thanks a lot. And we will speak to you again before the summer, but all the best.